First Coast's most accurate forecast from the First Coast News Weather Team, certified by Weather Rate, sponsored by AC Designs.
Good afternoon, everybody. Another beautiful day out there across really the entire First Coast, but specifically here in downtown Jacksonville. Good shot out at not only the River City, but also the Hart Bridge there, the Green Monster. A little shaky on the camera, mainly because we're zoomed in so far, but it is a little bit breezy out there today, Tim.
Yeah, in fact, I saw when the shift or when the main convergent wind squeeze, there's some science for you, went through the airport, they got a gust of 31. So that's sort of been working west and southwest. So this is kind of off topic, but real quick, don't you find, Ross, that you have when you look at that Hart Bridge now, you just have sort of a different feeling about it after doing it?
A little bit, yeah.
Of course, you charged up it. You had fun.
I did, but
you were like a football player going up to bleachers.
Well, last weekend I was at an event at Met Park, and just looking across at the Hart Bridge, I was like, wow.
Yeah.
I can't believe I was like standing on top of there of my own 2 feet, not from driving up.
And after you had already done 8 miles, so it's pretty impressive. But yeah, you're up there, aren't you? I mean, that's why we say, is it a bridge or a view?
It was a gorgeous view once you got to the top. So. Oh, look at some of those temperatures along the coast.
Wow. Well, we talked about it, and look at that. It is cool right on the beach, because I think St. Augustine, that's the pier, and then St. Simon's Island is right there on the island.
And you're right. We did talk about this really the last 2 or 3 days now, that Thursday would be the largest variety of temperatures thanks to the easterly flow we got in here. So, yeah, cooler along the beaches, whereas if you live in Gainesville or Lake City, you're upper 70s,
Still
even
warm.
83 in Gainesville there. Yeah, so wide variety. There's the look at your winds coming out of the northeast. Sustained at 15, but you heard Tim say gusts 25 to 30. So it is, still certainly a fairly breezy Thursday afternoon and evening. And you combine the winds with the dry air. Yeah. Now, if you are out along the beach, or at least let's just say 95 eastward.
Yeah.
Your dew points aren't going to be nearly as low, but west of 95 and really just west of the St. Johns River, relative humidity still down anywhere from about 35 to even 25%. So the wildfire threat still a concern here this evening, Tim.
Right, and allow those temperatures last night to really drop, that dry air.
Yeah, I think we got to 48.
Yeah, airport went all the way to 48. I was concerned that maybe our forecast for lower 50s was too low, but 48. I think Cecil Field got down to like 43.
Oh, okay.
But yes, then as the moisture comes up, then we will notice the morning lows warming as well, starting tomorrow and then big time over the weekend and then really much of next week.
Yeah, so at least with regards to the wildfire threat and the fire danger, today will probably be the last, critical day to be watching for it. That humidity and those dew points start to come up a little bit more as we head into the weekend. I'm going to take us just on a little bit of a tour here, Tim. So there's a couple complexes kind of across the country. First of which is in kind of the I-10 corridor there in South Texas.
We're gonna try to figure out what that means for our Sunday.
Yes. But they've got, I believe, they've got a large swath of, I think, flood watches.
Yeah, and I was looking right down on the Rio Grande. I think near McAllen, they have some flash flood warnings now. So that's,
okay.
It's
and
definitely.
I can see there is a severe thunderstorm warning there down near the Rio Grande as well.
Yeah. Okay. Right. Just before the radar gets on it. Yeah. That's where the flash flood warning was. So that complex is putting out. That's for sure.
So that's the first one. Another one kind of coming across this is up for debate what you call this area, the upper Midwest, or you want to say the Ohio River Valley, Mississippi River Valley?
Yeah,
how would you describe it?
I personally would say the heading from the gateway city of St. Louis into the Midwest, or the central Mississippi Valley into the Midwest.
Okay.
I'm smiling because we've heard the debate here in the newsroom.
Yes. The heated debate in some regards from some folks.
Yeah.
So
now, just for some meteorology, so whereas the system down south in Texas, we'll talk more about that. I would say that's primarily upper level related, but they do have surface low pressure for now, and we'll get back to that later. But this is actually the southern end of a front that has a pretty vigorous vortex right along the Canadian border, right?
Yeah.
But that's going to fly. Oh wow, there it is, perfect.
Look
at Ross, nice.
I do think I was trying to toss something in here to kind of give us a different view of what each of these systems was kind of riding along. So you can clearly depict kind of the two separate jet streams there, the one to the north, the polar jet, and then that subtropical jet, kind of going right over the Rio Grande and then across the Gulf.
That's a great graphic showing basically two different animals that are, one's going to move pretty fast, the one up north, and then the one down south is going to, take all weekend to get across the Gulf.
And then I don't have anything specific on the third one, but way up in the Pacific Northwest, you and Robert and I talked about it yesterday, that big storm system.
And you nailed it, 978 millibars on the surface. Now this is basically about what, 500 millibars? Are you showing?
The black lines are 500 millibars.
Okay.
Yeah.
So just so people know, that's sort of the wind flow at 18,000 feet, very often called 500 millibars. And
now the wind specifically, that's 250.
Okay, so the lines are 18,000 feet. The arrows are 250. Gotcha. 250 millibars, folks. So that's about 30,000 feet. And then the colors, is that vorticity?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, just to kind of show the energy.
Okay. So when we talk about vorticity, folks, we're talking about where there's extra energy, a little more maybe cyclonic turning in the atmosphere, which allows for lift, and that's what you really need for significant precipitable events is lift. But yeah, that graphic shows a lot of stuff. For those of you that are young forecasters out there, there's a lot of information right there.
So at least staying dry here tonight.
Yeah.
Should
be some nice sunset colors, don't you think? Maybe with that thin veil of cirrus clouds.
Yeah, coming at us from the west there, from South Texas. So, are you confident in these overnight lows?
I think a little more, although I do wonder if
some of the west areas.
Yeah, maybe go a little bit down there again because those dew points are way down there, especially after what happened last night.
And this might be, maybe this is saying too much about it, but so the Jacksonville low, and anytime we show these maps, the Jacksonville number is our forecasted number. The rest of it is kind of forecast like grid data, so to speak. So we are not manually putting in those numbers for everything else. It's kind of interpolated. So that's why sometimes when we're on here, Tim, right, like we'll say this might be overdone a little bit. It might be a little too warm or a little too cold.
Great point. So what we're kind of doing is
these are really just to kind of give people a broad idea, but they're not perfect.
And maybe what they're hearing us is critiquing the computer model a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, because computer models, they're close, but sometimes, especially if it's down around 32, 1 or 2 degrees matters a whole lot.
Yeah, it makes a big difference.
Yeah.
So same thing here then tomorrow, though I do feel pretty confident in our afternoon highs, mid to upper 70s along the coastline, and then low to mid 80s pretty much from Jacksonville inland. It's still going to be a pretty breezy day, Tim, but winds a little bit more so out of the southeast rather than the northeast.
But yeah, there's indications, especially as temperatures heat up and just enough of a gradient to where there might be inland gusts every 25 even tomorrow afternoon.
So would you consider that a windy day?
I think Weather Rate would say that, right?
Yeah.
If we have enough hours in a row.
Yeah.
But I do think once the temperatures warm up, in other words, when you say windy during the winter, that doesn't sound good.
Yeah.
But then when it's during, as temperatures warm up, and maybe not enough now, but for instance, if it was a Friday evening, it was 90, and we're saying we're going to get a sea breeze of 20 or 25.
I feel pretty good.
I'd feel pretty good. Like I'd make sure if I'm going to use the term windy, it's going to be like, hey, nice.
Yeah.
Helps us with the heat at least a little bit.
So I guess the other factor then, besides the warmth,
they're coming up.
Let's say the breeziness, but also the dew points and the humidity. By no means is it going to necessarily feel humid on a Saturday, but you might just notice it's not going to feel nearly as dry. But I do think, especially as you head into Sunday, dew points mid to upper 60s potentially. So feeling much more damp, sticky out there, and obviously that's going to be due to some of our rain chances on the way. So we'll get into that.
All right, the Strawberry Festival. Just as a side note, I think I was at the first one doing live weather.
Well, I can tell you, I certainly was not.
Now, Ross, I don't know, you've probably noticed by now, but
do you know how, I was going to say, do you know how old I am, Tim?
You are approaching, I would say actually, there's a 90% chance you're in your middle 20s.
Well, I was going to say, I'm pretty sure I was in the womb. Actually, I may have just been born the previous September, before the inaugural Strawberry Festival in Bradford County.
Well, you should probably be definitive because hopefully you know your birthday.
Well, I do know my birthday, but it's like how the math works out. You know what I mean? Like,
gotcha.
which time of the year.
Yeah.
Because I'll be 28 this year. But this is the 27th. So technically I was probably alive for the first one. I digress. We'll get into it here. Saturday's going
to figure out if you're trying not to share too much intimately about your mother, because you talked about the womb and.
No.
Okay.
No.
Were you baptized by
Yeah.
by the Strawberry Festival?
Yeah. Maybe they'll baptize you in some pruned or juiced strawberries down there.
All I was going to say was that what I find fun is you can see the Strawberry Festivals work northeastward in Florida. So some of the big ones are like down in Plant City, like in February, and then they get to Lakeland end of February, early March. And now here we are in late March, and now they're up to Stark. And I think if we were to follow them, we could even take it all the way to South Carolina. But anyhow.
When I think Clay County had their Strawberry Festival,
okay.
I think at the beginning of March, maybe.
Okay, makes sense. Yeah, so it just keeps gradually working northeastward.
But the key here is if you're going to either the Strawberry Festival or any other outdoor event, or you got anything planned outdoors this weekend, Saturday is going to be the nicer day to do it.
Saturday is your day. If you pretty much. I'm trying whether or not to use the word guarantee, Ross, but I think for 95% of us, we could guarantee Saturday is going to be your dry day. If you don't want a chance. Like, we can't guarantee that everybody's going to get wet Sunday, but if you're your closest thing to a guaranteed dry day. But now you're taking us toward areas of tropical moisture. There's that upper level system working east. Oh, we just said upper. So upper is kind of like a loft.
It is.
And so what do we mean by upper? So now that we're getting into the tougher forecast, that is Sunday. So let me make an attempt at this, Ross, is why it gets tougher for us versus if you're in South Texas. I think many people who watch the weather, they use the barometer. Benjamin Franklin did, right? And with relatively low pressure, that's sort of your first clue that, hey, a storm is coming, right? Mm-hmm. And then you look for heat and moisture and all kind of other things, which South Texas has. So if you were just looking at the barometer, you'd say, wow, barometer's dropping and it's getting kind of low. Whereas the reason our forecast is a little bit tougher is that our barometer the reading is not going to drop all that much. It's going to drop maybe about 4 millibars from where it is tomorrow to where it's going to be Sunday. So when we use the term upper level, that's our way of saying, like, if you were to look on the weather map, you wouldn't see this certainly wouldn't see a strong low pressure system right on the weather map heading toward us. And if you're a forecaster, you might be wondering, well, why is that there? That's why we use the term upper levels, that once you get up to about 10 to 15,000 feet, the air is cooler there. There's more energy. Ross was showing that. And so that's what's going to be the main triggering mechanism for the showers and thunderstorms. But I also say that because as a forecaster, if you don't have the surface low pressure, the whole thing becomes a little iffier as far as really trying to nail it down, right?
Yeah, and I was going to say a lot more defined if it is surface-based.
Right.
Not only in how it visually looks on radar or satellite, but also just like your overall storm risk and threat. If it's much more of a surface-based, low pressure system, certainly could give you some stronger to if not severe storms.
Yeah, and are we in the warm sector? Or are we in the?
Yeah.
We could if we had our professors with us, they probably would force us to try to draw a front, but it would all be pretty fuzzy and hazy. Whereas toward that low, where the surface, that great map, Ross, again. So folks, what we're talking about is if you're near that surface low, it just makes everything more definitive. Where the warm sector is, where your overrunning rain, where your squall line might be, where drier air is coming in, whereas we are sort of around, for lack of better words, that fuzzy part of the warm front. And yet, at the same time, as Ross painted, we're going to have tropical moisture. Moisture is going to come up. We're going to maybe get some sun. So there's a lot of perfect terminology. You've been using that all week, and I think it's perfect. A messy system.
Yeah.
And I think what you mean by that, Ross, is, the weather's kind of messy, like it's not going to be a beautiful day. But as forecasting, right? Forecasting, it's kind of messy. It's not like real definitive triggers we can nail down.
Exactly, yes. Two kind of separate meanings there. Because you are right, the forecast itself or the weather that you're going to experience on Sunday is kind of messy. I talked about that in our news meeting here earlier. Like, we'll likely see some showers kind of through the morning. Or at least the first half of the day, and then perhaps some isolated thunderstorms in the afternoon. It's going to be humid, kind of damp out there. but it's not just going to be like a wall of rain and storms moving across like we've seen the last several events. We've been tracking some form of a line of storms or rain. Not going to really be like that this time because due to Tim's point, upper level system kind of working its way across, and we're at the very tail end. This is my best way to try to depict.
No, of course.
The actual surface-based system.
I mean this. I'm pretty serious about this as far as forecasting. That although we're heading toward the time of the year where the stronger storms are up north, I do think this is what makes forecasting down south tough, because we're getting to the time of the year where, the easier thing is to say, there's going to be some showers around, but if you really want to nail it down to timing and exactly who's going to get it, it really starts getting tough increasingly this time of the year until something more definitive like this comes in. So that's why, in a way, although it's the same system, Sunday's forecast is is really a different animal than what we're talking about late Monday.
Yeah, because late Monday, that cold front drops southward or to the southeast, and not only a chance to see some storms, but some of which could be strong to severe, especially kind of by the back half of Monday and kind of even into the overnight period. So before the front arrives, perhaps some compressional heating there, kind of ahead of the front, Tim.
Yeah. Could be.
Temperatures mid to upper 80s in some instances. I mean, going to be a very warm, humid day, so there will be plenty of kind of juice or fuel available.
I'm trying
in
to
the
think,
atmosphere.
if you combine temperature and dew point, it might be one of the warmest feeling days we've had so far this year.
You're probably right. It probably will be, yeah. So
there's the severe risk, and this comes at us from the Severe Storms Forecast Office.
And this is for Sunday.
This is
for the
Sunday.
Central part of the country.
And then watch how that moves, folks. And that's why I think we're a little more concerned for severe weather threat in southeast Georgia. But then depending on how organized that is and what time of the day that develops, will some of that get into the Jackson Metro area?
Yeah, and how confident are you feeling, putting out kind of a timetable? It's not going to be exact, obviously, because this is next week. And, we talked about it a little bit.
Yeah, I think your terminology, dinner time, is right?
For southeast Georgia.
Southeast Georgia. And then walking the dog time.
Before you go to bed kind of thing for Jacksonville, and then kind of during the overnight period. It will be interesting, and this is maybe just a thing I've noticed since moving to Jacksonville, Tim, is the low-level jet. When I worked in Oklahoma, you could guarantee that was going to kick in by, let's say, if sunset 7:45, low-level jet's kicking in at 8, 9, 9:30, and then kind of dissipates by midnight or so, at least a little bit. I don't feel like it has as big of an impact here. There is some, but I don't feel like it's the same, intensity or strength.
Yeah, I personally, yes, I agree.
Because that's something now that I always look for that kind of thing, and I think it does impact it or influence it. But
I personally think it's for two reasons, and I'm comparing Oklahoma to here, and that is typically in Oklahoma, those troughs are still digging toward you, right?
Yeah.
Whereas typically for us, very often they're lifting away. And at the same time, especially this time of the year, we have these cool bodies of water where the wind has blown for hundreds, if not thousands of miles. Whereas over Oklahoma, it's been over land for hundreds of miles. So that heating and mixing, gets up there. Whereas, with our peninsula, we don't have a whole lot of room for that to get going.
It just kind of traverses over, the Mexican plateau in Texas, kind of there across the southern plains.
So there's your 7-day outlook. I'm going to go, and don't forget that opening day is Tuesday evening.
For the Jumbo Shrimp.
Yes, Jumbo
Opening
Shrimp.
day for Major League Baseball's today.
Today, wow.
They're swinging away here today. I'm a Phillies fan, so I should have worn my red, white, and blue for the Phils. But yes, the Jumbo Shrimp swing away next Tuesday evening. We will have full coverage across the street at VyStar Ballpark for both Good Morning Jacksonville Tuesday morning, and then also for our evening newscast Tuesday night. Myself, Chris Porter, we will be live over at the ballpark giving you not only, the details on the weather forecast for that, but also I'm planning on giving you guys at least a little bit of a tour of some of the renovations that they've been going on. If you've been downtown at all recently, they've been completely redoing right field. They got new seats out there, new food options and things of that nature. So some exciting and fun stuff to look forward to if you do plan on going to any games over at VyStar Ballpark to see the Jumbo Shrimp this spring or into the summer. So we'll talk about that then on Tuesday. I do think it will be a dry evening for that. So that 30% coverage area for rain on Tuesday, primarily going to be in the early morning. So I would say by 8 to 9 a.m. on Tuesday, then everything clears on out. And the rest of next week, kind of feeling a little bit warm and humid. You'll notice overnight lows in the 60s for the most part, highs in the mid 80s, dew points still in the 60s as well. So kind of a warm and humid outlook there through the middle of next week. So enjoy the dry skies and the sunshine here today while you can. Again, some isolated showers and storms on Sunday, potential severe weather risk Monday evening. We'll have more on this here over the next several days, but until then, I'm meteorologist Ross Mumo, and he was Chief Meteorologist Tim Deegan. As always, thank you for watching, and take care.